inside the Borg and free from the hive mind, this is Rex Bear hosting Leak Project. The Leak Project was created to offer awareness and information not found in the mainstream news. With over 90% of the world's media controlled by only 6 enormous conglomerates, many people today are looking for more accurate information. The Leak Project offers a refreshing approach to the brain drain media. Check back daily for new content as we thrive to bring you the cutting edge in news, current events, on-scene video footage, interviews, and most importantly, the truth.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We have Milo Duquette, an American writer, lecturer, musician, and occultist, best known as an author who applies humor in the field of Western Hermeticism. Duquette has written several successful books on Western mystical traditions, including Freemasonry, Tarot, the Kabbalah, Ceremonial Magic, the Enochian Magic of Dr. John Dee, and Spirit Evocation Goetia. He is perhaps best known as somebody who also is well-versed in Aleister Crowley's works. Duquette occasionally appears on radio shows and television as a guest expert on subjects involving the occult. We are very glad to have you on with us tonight, Lon. How's it going?
It's going fine. It's a beautiful night in Costa Mesa, California. The night blooming jasmine is blooming, and it's just a beautiful night. It's about 72 degrees, and I couldn't think of a better thing to do with my time tonight.
Perfect. Well, we certainly are glad to have you on the show. Many of our listeners are well-versed in different theories of magic and practice. I know that you've had an entire life of information and knowledge that you have been able to obtain through different resources. I mean, if you look at your portfolio, you've written a plethora of works on different types of magic, and many people, even that do have a substantial background in Hermeticism, don't know a whole lot about Enochian magic and different types of sexual magic. It's one of those things that is obviously not talked about much, especially in the mainstream media. What could you say as far as information? What information could you give our listeners that would like to dive into some type of Enochian magic? What is its purpose, and how is it done?
Well, I'm glad we've got a couple hours. Actually, the reason that you do any of this stuff is to expand your own consciousness and further your own efforts toward personal enlightenment. And any other reason for doing it would be a side trip of some kind. So it's the same reason you would take part in any other form of spiritual practice or discipline. As a matter of fact, every insight or wisdom that you would gain with involving yourself in the different magical practices basically give you the same enlightenment and the same spiritual evolution that you would get with any number of spiritual practices. Magic just puts things, has a different vocabulary of what you're doing and what's happening. So it's not to take the romance out of it, but magic is a spiritual art form that is its own sort of colorful set of techniques, and not everybody is right for magic. Not everybody resonates to that. Magic is an art. Okay, it may be a spiritual art form, but so is any number of martial arts and things like that. It's a spiritual art form, and no two artists are alike, and there are just some people that resonate very well to the trappings, the tools, the nomenclature, the idea ceremonial magic. Just like there are some people that resonate very well to quiet meditation or mantra yoga or Tibetan Buddhism or any number of other disciplines. So I don't want to take the magic or the mystery out of it, but it is a spiritual practice like all spiritual practices, and not everybody is suited for it, but those who are enjoy it or can use it. So,
didn't Aleister Crowley say once, or maybe several times, that every thought, every action is a form of magic?
Yeah, his ultimate basic definition of magic is the science and art of just causing change to occur in conformity with will. And so that means any willed action in your life is essentially and technically a magical act. And part of his great contribution to this magical philosophy, if you will, is that he approached this idea that magic is causing change to occur in conformity with will. His thing was, and let's make sure that your will is actually in harmony with what your will really is. Find out what your will is, and then set to work to do it. And it was, it sounds like such a simple thing. Planets have their orbits. Stars have their paths in the universe. Everything seems to be have a function. I'm of the opinion, and it has to be an opinion because I can't prove it, but I don't think we would exist. You and me wouldn't be talking here. We wouldn't be here if there wasn't something that needs to be done that only you and me can do. And if there wasn't anything left for me to do that I guess only I can do, then I wouldn't even be here. I would have no function. And so Crowley's thing was, find your own orbit, find what that orbit is, find what your will is, find what you're here to do, and then set to work to do it. He just happened to be quite an expert and quite an adept in exercising that will through the magical arts of Western Hermeticism and classic Western ceremonial magic. But that doesn't mean that magic is the only path to this. Magic is only just one path for those who resonate to that kind of magical art form. I'm of the opinion that the greatest magicians in the world don't even know or care or need to know that they're magicians. They just found out what their will is in life and are setting out to do it. So I think the greatest magicians in the world right now don't even call themselves magicians. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. And it also brings up a good point when you bring up will and the consciousness and focus and how we're all on our own path. Aleister Crowley seemed to really push this agenda. At least he would make people feel that he was evil, and some people would call him demonic or whatever. He even called himself the most wicked man in the world. He called himself the great beast, the great Therion, and some people think clearly that, he is the Antichrist, and other people truly believe that he is a teacher and a prophet of the New Age. So yes. Why would he do that? Why would he come out and say he's evil and the wickedest man in the world and he's the beast
Well, he didn't. No, it was the newspapers that called him the wickedest man in the world. He called himself the Beast 666, and he called himself the Master Therian, and all of that stuff. But if you're a Kabbalist and versed in Western Hermeticism, you know exactly what it is that he's talking about. I guess, with all due respect to those who think that they know a bit about Aleister Crowley, Aleister Crowley was happy letting people who were so uneducated and so ignorant and so naive to be afraid of Kabbalistic terms such as beast, chaos. These are only references to Kabbalistic Sephir on the Tree of Life, Bina and Hokmah, that's Babylon and the beast. It's the same thing as the Hindus, Shiva and Shakti. Nobody gets upset about Shiva and Shakti. Crowley said, if you're not smart enough to see exactly what I'm saying here, then I don't even want you interested in this stuff. I'd rather have you afraid of it and calling me evil than for you to be too stupid and coming and taking part in this sublime spiritual discipline and practice. And he was more or less just that frank. If you are stupid enough to be afraid of me, then I want you afraid of me. That's basically his attitude. And you know, he overestimated the public's ability to see what he was actually into. And so he, most people thought he was evil. Most people, took that at face value, didn't do their homework, reacted superstitiously, and, so he was never really a super popular guy during his lifetime. And it's taken, 50 some years after his, 60 years after his death for, the general spiritual public at large to become familiar enough with Eastern mysticism, to become familiar enough with Tibetan Buddhism. The Dalai Lama would not be upset with Crowley in any way, shape, or form. Okay. It truly is a matter of, are you so superstitious? Are you so hung up? Are you so uneducated as to be afraid of this guy? Then he wants you afraid of him. That's
sure. Sorry to interrupt, Lon. I was just thinking that reminds me somewhat of religion, how they tend to turn everything into something evil if it can't be explained or if it doesn't conform with their ideals.
There you go. And there's nothing particularly a Christian mystic, okay, who's actually familiar with and experienced in and has gained the levels of illumination that are completely capable to the Christian mystic, wouldn't be upset in the slightest with Crowley. They'd just say, "Oh, he's saying the same thing I'm saying in a different way." And Crowley he was terrible with people. He was a terrible PR guy, okay? But he had one thing going for him that worked. He thought if he embraced, if he went along with the gag of his evilness, in the same way as, say, Penn and Teller, the great stage magicians, do seemingly scary things, but they do it, and you remember their tricks. Crowley figured that long after his death, his works would continue to be published and republished both by his friends and supporters and his enemies. Crowley would have died completely in obscurity, and we wouldn't be talking about him right now if it wasn't for the people that were afraid of him and kept his name alive. It was a brilliant piece of he worked in British Secret Service.
British intelligence, right?
Yeah. And it was a technique of misinformation, if you will, to have your enemies keep your work alive as well as your supporters. And he succeeded admirably in that. But I tell you, when I first started studying Crowley, I was that stupid, superstitious kid. Okay, he's scared. Whoa, this guy is. I don't know about this guy. But when I read the Book of Thoth, his wonderful book on the tarot, I didn't understand 99% of that book, but I did know that this was the most brilliant mind. This guy knew everything I wanted to know about Kabbalah, about tarot, about mysticism, about the Western Hermetic way, about alchemy. I knew he had what I wanted to learn. And it was only after I met people who worked with him, who Grady McMurtry stayed with him in England. Grady McMurtry got a 9th degree OTO directly from Crowley. My teacher, Phyllis Seckler, corresponded with Crowley. My dear friend of the family, Helen Parsons Smith, was a contemporary of Crowley at Agape Lodge here in California, the only active lodge of OTO in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. It was only after I talked with these people, and they made me feel silly for being superstitiously afraid of Crowley. They made me feel ashamed of myself for being so superstitious and afraid. And it taught me the first thing that you need to know in any form of spiritual discipline is don't be afraid. And that was Crowley's first big obstacle. It was his first big initiation. Are you sincere enough? Are you devoted enough? Are you tenacious enough to overcome your initial fear of the threshold of initiation? And if you are, the Holy Grail is just behind this door. But if you're going to be afraid, okay, you still have too much baggage to be a good initiate. You have too much baggage to be a true initiate. And magic is not going to be for you as long as you're that scared, and as long as you're that superstitious. Magic will be a doorway to mental illness. You've got to be beyond that before you even start. And so Crowley's bad reputation serves many very positive purposes. It keeps people who are not ready for a mature, serious spiritual discipline. It keeps them in a place where they're not going to harm themselves. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And there's informal study of Kabbalah, in Orthodox study of Kabbalah, they say you need to be a man over 40 and be rich enough to do this. Okay, and in a way, that's kind of silly. Obviously, you can study Kabbalah at any time, but what they're saying literally is you need a level of maturity. You need a level of scientific wonder in your heart. I watch these nature programs on PBS. A couple of years ago, I watched this story on spiders. Now, spiders freak me, okay? I live in California, and we've got these black widows and stuff. But this guy, the guy on the show, he just loved spiders. He was passionate about spiders, and from a scientific point of view, he got bliss out of spiders. And he'd pick up these giant, crazy, poisonous spiders, and with this big smile on his face, and he'd turn them upside down, and he'd poke their stomach and say, hey, look at this, how notice their mandibles and stuff. And he had this wonderful joy of scientific discovery, this dispassionate fearlessness for his subject. That overcome absolutely everything, and you could tell that this guy is Mr. Spider. I mean, and that's how magic should be. Magic is a science and art that deals in visions and the imagination and dreams, visions that you get by plumbing the depths and the heights of your own psyche. We have within ourselves heaven and hell, and a magician has to have complete familiarity and mastery from the deepest hell to the highest heavens. One quote says, "My adept has his head in the highest heavens and his feet in hell." Right. And you have to be willing to look at what manifests in vision and your life as angels and spirits and demons. You have to look at those with the same joy as that scientist that was dealing with those spiders. Magic is something you tackle with the dispassionate joy of a scientist. And Crowley saw that. He even said that the magic of Thelema is the method of science, but the aim of religion. And I've been studying Crowley stuff since the early 70s, and I'm still amazed, awed, shocked at the things I'm discovering in Crowley's works. And above all of this, he was just human. It was his humanness, because he was a real jerk, and he could be really just a petty guy. You can see through his humanness on almost all levels. But because he was so human, you can see your own humanness, and you can start to touch on your own genius through your own humanness. And him calling himself the Beast, in a way, is this embracing the idea of all of our own humanness. And part of our humanness is the body, the primitive nature, as well as the refined refined nature. But it's nothing that isn't already embraced, done, qualified, organized, and categorized in Tibetan Buddhism or Hindu philosophy or the Vedas or any number of other spiritual practices. Crowley was just a little wilder and, in my opinion, a lot more fun.
Well, he certainly was and is ahead of his time, and he has influenced the world in more ways than many people know. Obviously the music culture and a lot of the Hollywood stuff that's out there now is there's a lot of mysticism involved in the movies that come out and different ritualistic type, events and numbers and numerology. One of the things that I found interesting was similar to what you said. The first time I had the opportunity to read the Book of Thoth many years ago, it really made me nervous, and I didn't know what to expect. And I was, I guess you could say, a noob at the time. Now that I've had a lot of knowledge and information since then, I've reread that in more of a scientific point of view. And it seems to me, at least in the Book of Thoth, whether it is him writing it or if it is automatic writing, that it's.
I think you're talking about the Book of the Law.
Correct. Let's go. You're right. The Book of the Law. I appreciate you correcting me on that.
The Book of the Law.
He put together that compilation of books and the Book of the Law. When I read that the first time, it seemed very frightening. And like I said,
I burned my copy. I was so freaked. I burned my copy.
Well,
first time I read it, oh my God, he's the devil. And I took it out. I took it out in the driveway and poured alcohol all over it and burned it. And then I watched it burn because he says, the comment in it is the study of this book is forbidden. It's wise to destroy it after first reading. Well, I destroyed mine. But before it was completely burned up, I had sort of a little nervous breakdown because I had come out of a life. I was very active in the anti-war movement of the 60s and of the 60s, and I came out of a very progressive mindset. And one of the worst things that a person can do is burn a book. And even if it's a bad book, the idea of burning a book, that's what the Nazis did, okay? You don't burn a book, okay? Books are ideas. Books are living. There's an excuse. There's sometimes a good excuse to punch somebody in the nose, but there's never a good excuse to burn a book. And I was so afraid of this book because the third chapter is a doozy, isn't it? That I freaked out and set fire to that book, and then I said, "What are you doing? What could possibly be in that book that makes you commit this personal taboo?" And before that book was through burning, I knew I was going to have to find another one, and read it again. I may not understand it, but I did understand that nothing should make me react that way. I was going to have to get control of myself, and I grew up. I grew up in that moment.
Lon, let me ask you that particular work, the Book of the Law. When you read it, it sounds to me as if whoever wrote it, whether it was Aleister Crowley's own mind or some spirit or entity or deity beyond him that was writing through him, it seems to be very, it specifically says it's a war god. And specifically in the work, it talks about how if you're an elite aristocrat, then that's where you should be. And if you're just a regular Joe, then you shouldn't be in the lines and same class as somebody that's a king or queen. Do you feel that was automatic writing? Or do you feel...
Well, yeah, I do. It was, he said it was dictated. There's 3 chapters, and literally there's 3 separate books, but 3 chapters. It was written over a 3-day period, okay? And I don't know if you recall specifically, but the first chapter is very, very, very beautiful, very sensual, very goddess, oriented. And the second chapter is pretty practical and everything. But the third chapter, is really wild and crazy. And, but the 3 chapters are 3 separate gods speaking. And these gods, and remember when we're talking about magic, the idea of gods, divine names, like the Kabbalists would say, are levels of universal consciousness. And there is a level of consciousness that is so high that it crosses what our natural brains or our intellect, or as the Kabbalists say, our ruach. You can only reason yourself so far. You can only understand yourself in the universe with your meat brain only so far. There are transcendent levels of consciousness above the reasoning process, or in the neshama, as the Kabbalists would say. So in other words, you can take your reasoning process really high in the spiritual world, but there comes a time that you need to surrender even that to achieve a higher level of consciousness. And that higher level above the ruach, the space between the ruach and that higher level is called the abyss. And everything above the abyss seems averse to everything below the abyss, in the same way as your image in the mirror is an averse image of you. And the idea that above the abyss something is only true in so much as it can contain within itself its own opposite. In other words, below the abyss there are opposites. Right, left, top, bottom, hot, cold. Okay. But above the abyss is a level of consciousness that is of another dimension, a dimension where there is no opposites, or all opposites are reconciled. And so this idea of I'm a god of war and vengeance and you'll deal hardly with them and everything. Okay, we're dealing with a level of consciousness or a god that is speaking from on the other side of the abyss, and we are trying to understand it with our below the abyss brains. And it just doesn't compute immediately. When you read the commentaries on the Book of the Law, the wildest things in the 3rd chapter have the Crowley comments with the tamest of explanations. In the same way that certain books of the Old Testament, you'd think, oh my God, are we really supposed to go out and beat the brains of our neighbors' babies out on walls? And are we really supposed to do that? No, they're speaking with another kind of metaphor. But I tell you, people that misunderstand that and they see that as an excuse to behave in an elitist or a fascist manner, are just the type of people that Crowley didn't want involved in this stuff. You see why he's trying to scare the scarable away? How easy it is for a mentally ill person to take these transcended documents and completely go crazy with it. Well, we see it happening in the Middle East right now with another document, don't we?
Sure. It's been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah, but it's really going on right now, wild and crazy. And they're taking they're dealing with a document that is has its own high spiritual level of profound, sublime truth and mysticism in it, and they're turning it around and misunderstanding it and misapplying it in a horrible and monstrous way. So the same might be said of the potential of any spiritual document. People have misused the Bible too.
Well, it's interesting because you're right. If you read many of the texts in the Old Testament, it's full of murder and destruction. I don't remember the exact passage, but there's one particular chapter, several chapters, that supposedly God tells, I think, Adam to go kill 50,000 men, women, and children based upon their lineage, and don't spare anybody.
Right.
I find that difficult, that a divine providence, a creator of all and balance of everything would command something like that. So, in my opinion, I feel that that's more of a manly desires, not necessarily godly. But, I don't know.
Right.
Speculation.
Well, they're wonderfully good-hearted and good-souled people that accept the Bible for what it is, and they find a way to deal with that without hurting anybody, But the point is, the Book of the Law is one of those. It's a much shorter book, There's
right.
There's less to deal with. But I would, highly encourage anybody that would like to seriously study it to get Crowley's commentaries on it. There's several editions of a thing that's called The Laws for All. Has several of Crowley's commentaries on each of the passages of the Book of the Law. And the things that might upset you the most, he may not explain it completely to your satisfaction, but he will, take you to a place where you go, oh, gee, I'm really misunderstanding that. So,
and when you talk about different meanings in the Kabbalah, for example, the harlot, Babylon, the beast, what is the beast or the Therion in the Kabbalah?
Okay, are you familiar with the Kabbalistic diagram called the Tree of Life?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure many of our listeners are as well. For those that are listening, while you're listening to this conversation, if you don't know of the Tree of Life, just go ahead and Google it real quick. That will give you a good idea on this discussion. Please continue on.
Okay. Well, the Tree of Life sort of breaks the entire spectrum of. Well, first of all, you know that physicists are now saying unequivocally that the nature of existence is consciousness.
Great.
Okay. So the entire spectrum of consciousness from the highest, most fundamental singularity of consciousness, all the way down to our own consciousness that we feel that we are somehow separated from each other, our individual monads of consciousness. The Kabbalists break up or divide into 10 major levels. Okay, and it's just for convenience sake that they choose these 10 levels. You could break it up into 10,000, or you could break it up into 2, or but for convenience sake, they break these levels of consciousness up into 10 layers or 10 levels of consciousness. And the number 1 level of consciousness is that of the supreme singularity, the supreme absolute consciousness, what the Hindus would call Godhead, and what others would say the mind of the mind of God, the totality of the big consciousness. Number 2 on the tree isn't really a number 2. There can't be a number 2. There's only a number 1 in the world, in the universe. There's only the singularity. But as you get stupider, as you fall asleep, as this level of consciousness becomes slower, as this light becomes darker, okay, the light is always shining, okay, but there's a level of consciousness that doesn't see the pure light, and it's almost like, I'm kind of asleep. And the number 2 on the tree of life is just the reflection of number 1. There can't be a number 2. There is no number 2 in the universe. But there is one that reflects itself, and it doesn't have anything to reflect it. There is no outside of the big one, so it has to reflect itself inward. And so that is the number 2. And when the idea of 1 reflecting itself occurs, it falls deeper asleep, because a third condition is created instantly. That is, that there is a difference between the singularity and the reflection. The knowledge of the difference between the singularity and the reflection creates this third condition. So the second number 2 is created, number 3 is created instantly. And so this is called the supernal triad. This is why many religions and many philosophies have this idea of, if we're even going to think about this number 3, this number 1, we have to create a trinity, because number 3 and 2 is just aspects of 1 thinking about itself. I know this is heavy stuff for the late at night, but that's it, okay? 1, 2, and 3 don't really exist per se. 1, 2, and 3 are just 1 thinking about itself. So this reflection, this number 2, it's called Hokmah on the tree of life, or it's called wisdom. And number 3 is Bina, and it's called understanding. And number 2 is like the creation of an extension. It's a father. It's Shiva in the Hindu philosophy. It'd be like Shiva. And number 3 is the great void, the great opening that's this extension of number 2 sticks into. Okay? If you're going to have an extension of light, it's going to have to go into just like a lingam and a yoni. Okay? Number 2 is the lingam of the universe, of the lingam of God. Number 3 is the yoni of God. And in Hindu terminology, that is Shiva and Shakti. They go together, and in their ecstasy of lovemaking, they forget they are 3 and 2, and they, in the ecstasy of their giant lovemaking, they turn again into the one consciousness. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely it does.
Okay, well, in Thelemic terminology, the Hokmah, Shiva, and the Bina, Shakti, are called, number 2 is the beast, number 2 is Babylon. We just have different names for exactly these same cosmic principles that are in any number of other cultures and societies from ancient times. Crowley did the best he could to try to take the familiar principles that are familiar to Christian mystics, the terminology of this bizarre and wild and fun Kabbalistic document called the Book of the Revelation of John, and he just plugged in some of the terminology from that to help describe these other universal principles. And that brings us to the subject of sex magic that you mentioned we might bring up, this idea of ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy, where every one of us that's ever experienced an orgasm has had a glimpse of this universal bliss where our consciousness, for at least a split second, becomes one. Our sense of separateness with the entire universe disappears just for a split second. And if you work at it, it can last a little bit longer. And if you work at it, you can also do wonderful creative work when your consciousness is one with the absolute singularity. And that's the idea behind, the basic idea behind sex magic, tantric yoga. It's working with Shiva and Shakti. What makes sex magic such a attractive subject and an attractive practice is everybody already has some sort of experience with it. And
right.
And already has, whether you've known it or not, already have been unconsciously working with it already.
Well, and you've wrote a couple books on it, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah, the first few things that I wrote with Christopher Hyatt, Dr. Christopher Hyatt, dealt with tantric aspects and stuff because that was kind of his specialty. And I deal with it with almost anything that I write about Crowley, including my book, The Magick of Aleister Crowley, where I talk about the Star Sapphire, one of the rituals, sort of a hexagram ritual that Crowley created that dealt with these concepts.
Could you talk to us a little bit about that in specific, or?
Well, there's aside from the fact that perhaps Crowley's greatest sex magic ritual is something that doesn't you do it in public and doesn't even appear to be a sex magic ritual. You can take your grandmother to it and she wouldn't even freak out. Is his Mass of the Gnostic Catholic Church. It's very much like a Russian Orthodox or a Eastern Orthodox Eucharistic Mass, only there's a priestess involved. and figuratively speaking, and with wonderful, beautiful, breathtaking pageantry and poetry. The priest and priestess using a lance in a cup, rather nobody gets. You really can. You really do it in public. It's an OTO's public ritual. But the idea is that the properly prepared and with full magical intent, two people, the two can become one, and the one become the divine nothing that Buddha talked about. And in Kabbalistic terms, the Chokmah and Binah become Kether, number one, and Kether dissolves back again into the Ein Sof, or the divine negativity from which everything will come back into existence in another cycle.
Now,
it's pretty heavy stuff, okay, and you know you have to sort of laugh at commentators and so-called cult experts when they say such nasty things about Aleister Crowley, when we're really dealing with postgraduate level mysticism here. And so you have to sort of joke and say, well, wasn't he the devil himself? I'll give you a break.
You know, and it's interesting, too, because there's so many different types of magic, similar to any art. You're kind of connecting this with art, and it can definitely be an art form. So if somebody wanted to manifest great wealth, per se, and they wanted to obtain financial wealth and riches, would there be a specific type of ritual or practice that you would recommend for them besides, obviously, having a good career and making lots of money? I mean, is there some type of...
Well, having a good career and making a lot of money, if that's your goal, what changes do you need to make in your life to do that? Okay? This idea that you whip up some kind of spell to do something that otherwise you couldn't do. You know, you might be able to make it rain, but there's got to be some clouds up there to begin with. Okay, it's really hard to make it rain in the Sahara. If there was a spell you could do to be rich, believe me, I'd be doing it. You're not writing occult books is not a get rich quick
right
plan. Okay. Remember what I said, the greatest magicians in the world? I'll tell you who's a great magician, and that's what's his name in Nebraska?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett. Okay, that's magic. He's causing change to occur in conformity with his will, and that is every bit as much magic as somebody whipping on a robe and whipping an almond wand around in the middle of the night. And if it is your will to be rich, then you'll figure out what your spell is to be rich. You don't do magic to find out what your will is. You do magic to do your will. If making money is that important to you, then you have to do what a magician does. You have to banish all of those other things from your life that don't make you money. You have to invoke those gods. You have to invoke or evoke those spirits, the spirits of individuals that give you money. Those are spirits too. gods. You have to go to people that will loan you money to make money. You have to invoke the archangels of finance. You have to use the angels of your own wit to figure out a business plan. That's how you do it. Okay, it may very well be your will to win the lottery. If that's the case, flip a coin, make a few numbers. If it's your will, you'll win the lottery. I guess it's not my will because God knows I've tried. But do you see where I'm coming from here? Crowley goes to great lengths in Magic and Theory and Praxis to talk about this thing called the magic link. Well, the magic link is what links you to what you intend to bring into your life. If you don't have that link, it's going to be really rough to bring that into your life. If you want a beautiful wife, it's going to be really rough if you don't meet a woman. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And you bring up a good point. You know, your will, if you practice magic and you already know your will, it will be much easier to fulfill via the steps you take, whether you want to call it magic or imagination, meditation, focus, dedication, whatever. So it's a very valuable point. When a lot of people do, I guess you could say, research into different types of magic, sometimes, I guess, for the novices, there's typically the, spells that you can cast or whatever, and the different pacts that you can make with lower entities like the lesser keys of Solomon that have the different sigils that you can create that are supposed to manifest lower demons, lesser demons. Some magicians like Franz Barden, I don't know what Aleister Crowley said about that, but you brought up a good point earlier about how if you're not mentally stable, then you could very easily lose your mind when you start practicing different theories and magic, of course. So do you feel that there is people out there or are people out there that make pacts with certain entities or deities at a darker level or a different dimension per se that gives them a little extra boost in this physical realm?
They're not making a pact with anything that already isn't inside them. There is no outside of yourself. Consciousness is so big, there is no outside of yourself. So you can, of course, you can make paths or pacts with the evil things within yourself. Look at Donald Rumsfeld.
Sorry, that was funny. You are funny, Lon. That was.
Well, it's true. He not only did he get us in all this trouble, but he also gave us aspartame.
Aspartame, that's what I was going to say.
Talk about evil. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And it only serves to poison yourself. He's an unhappy and dangerous old man, and I wouldn't trade places with him for anything in the world. But the thing is, you create your own hell. You get your demons out of your own hell. The thing that you're supposed to do with demons is conquer them, not to make deals with them. They've been making deals with you your whole life. You're in the situation that you're in because you've already spent your life making deals with these things. You whip up a demon to say the deal making has stopped. You're going to be working for me now instead of against me, or you're not going to be working at all. That's why you whip up a demon. Not to make a pact with them, not to get an edge. You don't get an edge on anything. You just get further in debt to your own pathologies.
Well, Lon, thank you so much for putting it so eloquently. That makes a very good point. And the reason I brought that up is because many of the Hollywood icons that are rap stars and musicians today claim that they've sold their soul to the devil. They literally say it. And whether they're saying it jokingly or metaphorically, or whether they feel that they really did, there's a lot of information out there that says certain people have made pacts with deities or lesser demons to do their will. So I really like how you put that. If you're going to summon a demon, do it to tell it what you're going to do, not let's make a deal. That's really fantastic. And Lon, we're at the 1 hour mark. We would love to play one of your songs.
Okay, there's a cemetery in Paris where all of the famous people in the past seem to be buried. Jim Morrison is buried there. Oscar Wilde. It's called Père Lachaise. And there's just tons of people. Isadora Duncan, everybody who is anybody is buried at Père Lachaise. And I just turned 67, and that's when you start thinking about where you want to be buried. And so I wrote a goofy little song called Club Père Lachaise.
That was great. You know, one of the things that I find fascinating about this reality, this matrix that we live in, is it seems to be so, I guess you could say, almost holographic. And with all the research you get into, you look at an atom, you zoom in with an electron microscope. I mean, there's really not a finite point. And it seems that perception actually changes matter. There's several theories in play right now with very predominant scientists that say we could very well be living in a hologram. And one of our listeners asked the question, is the universe a hologram?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of hologram, but generally speaking, yeah, from this point of consciousness, it's just as easy to consider it that as anything. Spatial reality within space-time could just as easily be considered a hologram. But I want you to look at it this way. When you go into the bathroom in the morning and you look in the mirror and you look at yourself in the mirror, you see yourself, you see the reflection of yourself. It's all flat, okay? It's in the mirror, but you smile and it smiles. You wave your hand at it, it waves its hand at you. You give life to that image in the mirror. Okay. Now, you are three-dimensional. I mean, you've got depth. Okay. The thing in the mirror doesn't. But your three-dimensional you, gives life to this two-dimensional reflection. Okay. Now imagine that the three-dimensional you on the other side of the mirror is actually the equivalent of a flat mirror image of a multi-dimensional you. And that you are only just the flat reflection of something else that is giving you the semblance of life and consciousness. Are you following that?
Yeah. So basically, similar to what you talked about earlier, kind of like the old saying, as above, so below. And with everything
being... it keeps going. Yeah. And the idea is that we are trying to understand everything within the context of as if space and time were separate things, and they're not. And even the most pedestrian of physicists will tell you that. Okay, space-time is a single thing. So when we wrap our brains around that fact, then we realize that there is that everything that we think is happening yesterday, today, and tomorrow is really happening in a very bizarre new now. It's all happening now, and things like the idea of reincarnation. Okay, hey, I've got in my meat brain here, even in my baby's meat brain as a child, I had memories of being an adult in several other incarnations. It was just I was trapped in a baby's body. Going, oh God, how did I get in this baby's body again? And I remember events and everything else. Okay, I don't. When you look at it that way, it seems like there's been sequential incarnations. And when you try to look at things like that, well, what happened? Did Did my soul come out my nose and go to some place in between incarnation and go back into some baby body or something? No. Consciousness doesn't work like that. There is no past. There is no future. Okay, there's only a now that explains what we think of past was and what we think of future is. Literally, by truly changing our now, we are, in a very real sense, changing our past and changing our future. And so this idea that we're in a mate, we're a hologram is still a fancy snapshot of a very, very limited point of view of consciousness and existence. So it's easy to wrap our minds around it because of a movie, but really it's far more simple than that. Now, you and me seem like we're talking. I'm sitting here in California, and you're sitting there on the East Coast, and it seems like we're separate guys, talking. But if we were a little more awake, it's like the movie Inception. Did you ever see that? Oh, I love that movie.
Great movie.
And this is like the tree of life. Okay, down here in number 10 on the tree of life, we're asleep and dreaming that we're 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 dreaming. We are 10 dreams deep. And when we raise our consciousness to what is the level of consciousness represented by that ninth Sephirah, we've woken up. We've awakened one level higher. And when we get to number 8, Hod on the tree of life, we've awakened that much more. And in a sense, we've taken number 10 and number 8 with us because, oh, yeah, that was my dream. That was my dream me, And sometimes we'll fall back asleep down into those levels of consciousness. But once we open the door, it's like in that Inception. Once we open the door, we can come and go. Just like every night I fall asleep and I go back into another slower, deeper consciousness. The idea is once we get up as say high as number 6 on the tree of life, which is called Tiferet, and it's the same thing as the Hindus would say if we properly and in a very balanced way opened up our Anahat or our heart chakra. It brings a level of consciousness with it. One that is tantamount to what it appears that the prophet or the holy man or the Christ was talking about when we study what he may or may not have said in the New Testament. Krishna in the Hindus talked as if he had opened up that 6th level of consciousness. But there's higher levels of consciousness over that. We can wake up a little bit more and wake up a little bit more. And by the time we wake up to the fact that we are number 1, there is no Rex, separate Rex, and there is no separate Lon. Rex and Lon have been the same supreme being all along.
That's fascinating.
And the fact that we seem separate at the moment, the fact that it seems like there's trouble in Ukraine. The fact, the fact that it seems like it took Voyager 30 years to go through space. All of a sudden, all of that is happening in an incredible super now. And there is no difference. Now, when Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," when you're looking at me, you're looking at the Father. He's actually saying when you're looking at somebody as awake as I am, this is about as far as your meat brain can look at the big number one. Krishna said almost exactly the same thing. Holy men from every culture have said almost exactly the same thing. When you're looking at where I'm at, you're looking at as much as your meat brain and physical eyeballs are going to get to seeing what the big whatever it is.
Right. You know, we see what, 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum, and then our brain filters out 50% of that.
Yeah, right.
So the meat brain that's a good way to put it. The meat brain, you know, some people have more abilities. Typically, I think they say on average, scientists now are saying people use approximately 10% of their brain. So does that mean if we had full abilities, full facilities with our brain, we were able to activate any part of it at any given time, would that give us godhood in this body to where we could change form, basically be at the top of the tree of life?
Yeah, probably it would get us at least as far as we needed to go to realize and to access that level of consciousness, even without the meat involved.
Well, and that's another thing that I need to ask you, Lon. The transhuman movement right now is really pushing itself to another level with some of these very prestigious billionaires and high-end scientists and gurus in their field like Ray Kurzweil. It's interesting how he now is one of the top guys with Google in their technology department, and he's really gung-ho on creating a body that lives forever. Do you feel that if the natural form of society, or I guess you could say it's not even natural anymore, but it isn't completely artificial, if somebody moves into this computer per se to where they can live forever in meat years, does that really give them godhood, or would that take away their connection with universe?
To me, that'd be tantamount of being stuck someplace.
Right.
Yeah. There may be a wonderful application for something like that, but we're already. If we were awake enough, we'd realize that we're already in an eternal body, and so it's really neat to think that you could make a machine that would approximate that, and it might be a fun ride, and I don't want to get into extraterrestrial stuff because everybody's got their own point of view of all of that. But I think that that phenomena, or those phenomena, or at least much of it, deals with this fragility of time aspects, and we see this idea of those traveling extraterrestrial all getting by with less and less of a corporeal frame.
Right.
And I know I feel a lot better after I've lost 160 pounds.
I mean, I did notice you lost some weight, but wow, you lost how much?
It's 120 pounds. I lost 120 pounds. I'm down to 160.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you look great, man. Yeah, I mean, I'll bet you feel 10 times better.
Oh God, yes. And I could still knock another 5 pounds off. I'm trying, but I've stuck at 160 now for 3 years, so I think I'm doing okay.
That's great.
Yeah. I just had gotten too heavy. And my wife just more or less said, "Okay, you're going to do what I tell you to do." So
She got you in shape. That's great, man.
yeah, bless her heart.
Well,
we've been married 47 years.
Wow. You know, most people don't make it 47 months anymore. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we just fear change. You know.
You fear change.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, Lon, if I could ask you, this is from one of our listeners. The Holy Guardian Angel is something that Aleister Crowley talked about a lot in his works. I think that he said his Holy Guardian Angel was Iwas, is how he pronounced it. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, Iwas. Yeah.
Iwas. Now, how would one actually make contact with their Holy Guardian Angel without having to go through like all those rituals that you do in Abramelin the Mage, I think is the name of the book?
Right. It's as simple as falling hopelessly in love with God.
Okay.
That's it. You fall hopelessly in love with God. And sometimes it's easiest to do that when you with the one-pointed ardor, you actually take God as a lover, and the union is, I would say, it's similar to a sexual experience, but it's more like a sexual experience on steroids. Only the blast is centered in your heart, and but it blows the heart chakra open. If you're already doing say Kundalini yoga or something, and you've worked up in your chakra work to the heart chakra, that experience would be comparable to what Western Hermeticism calls the Holy Guardian Angel experience. It's a major wake up. It's the wake up where you actually realize that you've aligned your humanness with the divineness. And in Kabbalah, your humanness is symbolized by the pentagram, and the divineness is symbolized by the hexagram, and the Holy Guardian Angel experience is literally the alignment of your 5 with the big 6, and the light bulbs go off all over the place, fireworks.
Have you experienced it?
Yes. If you would have asked me this 3 years ago, I would have said no. But I have, I believe, in no uncertain terms, and it's pretty much everything is advertised, but nothing like you expect. If that makes sense.
And I've read about people that activated their Kundalini when maybe it wasn't the right time, and they had like literally physical ailments for years. Is that true?
I don't know. I just it may have. The experience was unambiguously physiological. It was a physiological change. It was a mutation. I haven't felt physically. I haven't felt the same. There are certain things that happen consciousness-wise and physically. Very good things, but they're permanent. For me, it was a true physiological mutation. And I have to think it's, on one way or another, it's the same with everybody. It feels like my eyes are centered in a different part of my head.
Jeez.
I'm not joking. And, the whole Abramelin operation, and I was part of the project of a small part. I wrote the introduction and kind of curated the new Abramelin edition, because the old Mathers one was just a fragment of the original material.
Right.
You have to put all of these old magical texts in context. Okay, we're talking about it was 1300 something. We're talking about a 14th century Jew writing about magic. Okay, Abraham the Jew. He's a real live character. Okay, he's a historical character, just like Henry Kissinger is a historical character.
Just a little bit different personality, right? Sorry.
I mean, George Den wanted to take me to his grave when I was in Germany just a few months ago. But so whatever the old grimoires say to do, and their instructions and their ideas, they are trying to inform a 14th century seeker on how best to achieve this level of consciousness, and using all of the ignorance and the hang-ups and the superstitions and the traditions and the world point of view and the belief in the literal historicity of the Bible and stuff like that. Now, you're really being foolish to slavishly follow a 14th century text with your 21st century cultural brain. You got to sort of put it in perspective. You got to read these things to inform you and to give you ideas of how this would apply to you in this century and with your level of spiritual sophistication and where you're at now. So the idea of trying to do the Abramelin operation just like Abramelin did it, I mean, why? Okay, the whole process, just look at the thing. What was he trying to do? He was trying to make you have a nervous breakdown. Okay, a controlled, socially acceptable nervous breakdown as you yearn toward God. He wanted to have you yearn for union with God in the form of his holy guardian angel so much that you go crazy in a good way. You become God intoxicated. You go crazy. You go so crazy that your heart chakra, you fall down and your heart chakra breaks open. That's what the Abramelin operation was meant to do. Do you think you're going to get it by following it like a recipe? You know, give me a break. Good luck. No, the whole idea is, see, this is what a 14th century guy had to do to fall in love with God. What do you have to do to fall in love with God?
Well
I
said.
mean, really fall in love with God. A few years back, I don't see him as much as I used to, but the Hare Krishna people bouncing around on the street corner, okay, these guys were in bliss. I mean, they just took a flat-out shortcut to the Holy Guardian Angel. They really did. You look at them, they're there. They did it. Okay, they did it in such a way it sort of ruined their home life.
Right.
But once you do it, what does home life matter? They for the most part, this supreme, intense devotional practice is what it's about if you're going to set to work to do it. In my case, I didn't even do that. In my case, I studied about it for 40 years, and all of a sudden, in the most strange and accidental way, one last thing happened to me that just pulled the trigger. I'd given up expecting it anymore. I was just happy. Okay, well, I know it's going to happen to somebody someday, and I believe it happens. But well, that's that. And then, bam! Just out of the blue, one little odd thing. It's just so small I can't even properly describe it. But that's all it took. That's all it took, and it just bowled me over, just flattened me, blew me back into the chair. I thought I was going to die, and I didn't care. Boy, what a way to go! It was like lightning coming out of my hands. I was afraid to move my hands around the room because I was afraid I was going to knock stuff off the wall. I had to pull on my shoes and walk all around Queens, New York. I was afraid to bump into people. I was afraid they're going to explode. I didn't come back to the apartment until I was just so exhausted. But it was still happening. It's still happening right now. But I've sort of put it in a cool little containment chamber in the general vicinity of my heart. But it's still going on, and when we start to think about it, compared to the literature describing the experience and everything, it's exactly as described. But it was absolutely nothing like I expected.
And do you think that it took you all these years to get to that point, or do you feel that this is something that you could have achieved 20, 30 years ago?
Oh, I probably could have, and I hope everybody else gets it, sooner than I did.
Right.
But I'm a tough case. So.
Well,
I'm a tough nut to crack.
It's another subject that I'd like to bring up with you on is Aleister Crowley talked about an entity that he met up with by the name of Lam, L-A-M. And when you look at the pictures that he drew of Lam, it looks like what many people would perceive as a typical Hollywood alien, like the Greys, the big head, the big eyes, the small mouth. My question is, was that an extraterrestrial, or was that a spiritual entity? What is Lam?
Well, does it have to be one or the other? I mean,
I don't know.
Couldn't extraterrestrials be spiritual entities?
Of course. And I think, thank you for correcting me on that. But what I meant by spiritual is that something that isn't in a physical form?
To tell you the truth, I have no idea. If you find I know Kenny Grant was really really big on Lamb, but I really haven't found too much material written actually by Aleister Crowley himself concerning Lamb. And if you found any, point me to it.
Well, let me ask you then, one of the interesting synchronicities or just interesting phenomenons, I guess you could say, is in the 40s, I think Mr. Parsons as well as Hubbard were doing some type of magical work that they claimed connected them to, correct me if I'm wrong here, you probably know about this better than I do, some type of different dimension per se. It was their great work. And some people speculate that the mass amounts of UFO sightings in the late 40s happened just right after those works that they performed. And they were both really into a lot of the same magic that Crowley was into, correct?
Oh yeah, Parsons was a student of at least like a correspondent student of Crowley's. Hubbard was not. Jack wrote about Hubbard in a couple letters to Crowley, and Crowley wrote Jack back and said, watch out for that guy. I think he's a con man. And he also wrote Wilfred Smith and Phyllis Seckler, I believe, about Hubbard, and said that he didn't trust Hubbard with Jack, and of course you know about the yacht and Jack's wife or Jack's, well, anyway, we were friends with Helen Smith, who was Jack's widow. In any case, there's no question that the flurry of UFO activity and the Babylon workings that Jack Parsons was doing, Jack Parsons sort of made up his own kind of, he took bits and pieces of Crowley material, and he wrote some poetry of his own, and Jack wanted to incarnate the Antichrist, and and he wanted to do it through sex magic. In other words, he wanted to manifest a magical child that would now. When Thelemites talk about the Antichrist, they're not talking about spooky stuff as much as they are talking about, remember this across the abyss talk, okay? They don't look at it as a villainous thing, but as the next step in spiritual evolution. So, but Crowley was very unhappy with Jack's sort of amateurish, at least in Crowley's eyes, it seemed amateurish and ill-conceived use of sex magic. And Jack was performing sex magic with his partner, and L. Ron Hubbard was taking notes. So in other words, in some sex magic operations, you have visions and you start to, talk or channel things, and you either need a tape recorder going or you need somebody writing it down. So Hubbard was the guy that was writing it down. And all of this material, I think, is easily downloadable as the Babylon workings, and people can probably just Google it on the internet and probably download it for free, see what the results of it are. It might not be as exciting as exciting and as dramatic as you think. But I see no quid pro quo, or I see no direct cause and effect of the alien activity and Jack Parsons making love with L. Ron Hubbard taking notes.
Now, when you talk about the Antichrist and how he wanted to basically help create the Antichrist with the sex magic, did he achieve his results? And what does he when you say spiritual evolution, but let's take it a step further if we may, what is the Antichrist? Because obviously the typical perception is...
That's what Crowley wanted to know too. See, Crowley, so what the fuck are you, excuse me.
Don't worry about it.
What the heck are you doing, this for? You know, I'm the beast. You know, I'm the beast 666. You know, you're being silly here, Jack. And many people kind of think he was too. Jack was a brilliant guy and a very, very colorful character. And sort of a maverick guy. If you want to know whether it worked or not, that would be something that only somebody who was only Jack's own consciousness would be able to tell you whether that worked or not. You know,
did they have a kid? The person that the gal that he was having sex with, did they have a baby? No. Well,
it's not that kind of baby. It's
not like Rosemary's Baby.
Well, no, it's more like an event, a vision event. Let's say you wanted to be a movie star, okay, and you did you thought you could do a sex magic ritual to make a baby, which is you as a movie star. You turning into a movie star is the baby. Get it?
Okay. So basically, by doing that, he would be creating himself as the Antichrist.
Yeah, there you go. And it may have blown up in his face.
Okay.
That's a terribly cruel thing to say. Jack.
Is that how he died? Did he blow up or something, making a rocket? That passed me up there.
Yeah, he blew himself up.
Oh wow. Okay.
You know, Jack invented jet-powered takeoff.
Right.
Jets take off because of, before Jack Parsons, in order to get a jet engine to kick on, they had to put it on a propeller plane and get the propeller plane going fast enough to get that much air going into the front end of a jet. And then it could kick on. Jack invented a jet-powered takeoff where you could just turn on the jet engine. Jack also invented solid rocket fuel, what put us on the moon. Jack Parsons has a crater on the moon named after him. It's on the dark side.
Perfect place to be.
but anyway, no, Jack was a wealthy guy, inherited a lot of money, had a beautiful home in Pasadena, which was also the headquarters of the California OTO, and Jack for a time was the lodge master. And but he had his own laboratory in the basement of his home in the city of Pasadena, said, "Oh, I don't think we want you having rocket fuel within the city limits. You're going to have to move your lab." And he said, "Okay," but he was in kind of a hurry because I believe he and Marjorie were going to on a little vacation to Mexico, and he dropped a can of fulminated mercury and blew up a good section of Pasadena.
Wow, that's new information to me. I had no idea. That's very interesting.
Oh, there's a couple marvelous biographies of Jack Parsons. One called Sex and Rockets, and one called Strange Angel. And both of them are very good biographies, despite their sensational titles. They are really good books, and he's one of the most colorful and remarkable characters. And of course, L. Ron Hubbard went off to found Scientology, and so I'm not sure that their workings were altogether successful, but they did achieve results.
Right. Certainly. Obviously Scientology is very controversial. We had a gentleman on here a while ago, Tony Ortega, which is really, I guess you could say, outspoken on Scientology. But, obviously that's a completely different subject. So we are running out of time. We've got about 11 minutes left, and I was hoping to get in just a couple of more questions with you here, Lon. The first one is about Luciferianism. There's a lot of information out there. Michael Ford writes a lot about Luciferianism, and most people would say that, in their opinion, it's inherently, aka, evil. Do you see Luciferianism or those that kind of rule the stage at the grand scale of the world, do they kind of lean towards that mindset or that path, the left-hand path? And do you think that it's something that is very powerful, and does it incorporate with any of these other practices of magic that you follow?
Well, I don't know enough about it per se to comment authoritatively on it one way or the other. The definition for left-hand path is as different depending on who you're talking to of what that means. For the most part, the people that I personally come into contact with that want to talk about Luciferianism don't strike me as anybody that is capable of ruling the world.
Right. Now, well, let me ask you though, those that do tend to rule the world with, the finances and resources, these very highly educated aristocratic families that have basically been at the top levels for hundreds, if not thousands of years, do they follow a specific set of practices? Because it does seem that they are very ritualistic in some of the events that they help sculpt and mold.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Nothing of a unified nature. What does draw them all together, and what does make them a unified force, if there is one single devil that they worship and that they are servants of, it is simply it can be wrapped up in the single word greed. Greed is the biggest single, most, if you want to call it evil, because ultimately everything works for the good, I just can't wrap my meat brain around some of the stuff. But the biggest single evil god on the planet is just simply human greed. It makes fraternal brothers out of others who worship greed. It gives the appearance of organized, concerted, conspiratorial activity where it really doesn't exist except for the web that's created by one greedy person with another greedy person. And I think if you just look at greed as the unifying force, the personal activities that are natural byproducts of a greed-oriented and greed-focused life tend to have similar practices, and they might be called something a little bit different, but more or less you would see the same general activities in the Japanese Yakuza as you would in the Sicilian Mafia. You would see the same. You would see the same basic behavioral patterns, and if you would like to call those behavioral patterns rituals, you would see the same thing taking place in the levels of arms, world arms manufacturers and dealers, as you would in the let's say Oriental or Colombian drug big business. Okay, the only thing that they need to have in common to give the appearance of a unified, organized, satanic force is their pure abandonment of their souls to greed. And it's greed that is the devil, not Lucifer. I mean, even the Luciferians will say, hey, Lucifer's a cool guy, he's a god of light. If anything is Jesus-like, it's Lucifer, you know. But if there's anything satanic and evil and awful and deadly and it's this greed devil. Have I gotten off my soapbox here?
No, absolutely. We appreciate that. We asked the questions and we got your response. Lon, I would also like you real quick, if you could, if you would like to, send us another song that we can close out with, and I would like you to give our audience your website and information where they could get your albums or books, please.
Oh, yeah. Well, just the easiest way to get both albums and books is just go to type my name, Lon Milo Duquette, on Amazon.com. Both my books and my CDs are for sale on Amazon, and please visit me on Facebook, and I have a Reverb Nation page. So, and I'm also at londuquette.com.
Excellent.
This is one of my reincarnation songs.
very special thank you to our guest tonight. For all of you that had the opportunity to be here with us, if you enjoyed the show, follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord, for the most recent interviews, videos, and podcasts. Or you can check us out on the World Wide Web, www.leakproject.com. Would you like to be a guest on our show? Do you have information that the world needs to see and hear? Send us an email, guestbookings@leakproject.com. Thank you, everybody. This is Rex Bear with Leak Project. Stay safe and be the change you want to see. Good night.